We begin the current Daf, Mesech Kesuvos Daf Dal. We begin 7 lines down at the top of the Yomit, where we continue qualifying the brisa that we mentioned before regarding situations of Einis, which we said that although Besul Nisul Yom Revi, really Besul gets married on a Wednesday, we said, however, because of a sakana, which was they'd have to be boil hegmet chila, we allowed the weddings to be done on Tuesdays. But then we said the situation of Einis, you can even do it on Monday. Now, one of the interpretations of Einis was regarding the idea of the general coming and grabbing away the food. So therefore, you're not going to have food, so you can do it on Monday. Another interpretation was that of if the father of the chassan or the mother of the kala dies, that's also a situation of Einis, which we let you do it on Monday. And that's our Gemara is going to continue qualifying that teaching of that Einis that allowed you to do the wedding on Monday. And also regarding that price about what the halachas are going to be in that situation regarding Avelis and so on and so forth. Today's daf. Sometimes we discuss in today's daf are, like we said, this idea of how do we deal with the wedding and the ensuing Shivas Yemei Mishnah when the father of the chassan or the mother kala passed away? Also, that Simchas Nesuin is comparable to Simchas Regla, and therefore it's Teichad in Mia Avelis. We discuss what's called Aninis, from the moment of death until Kabura, and Avelis, which ironically Taisa points out, even though Aninis Deirais are actually more Chomer in certain areas, Avelis, which is after the Kabura, that's when the Shivas Yemei Avelis begin, is the moment of after the Kabura is done. Now, we said in the Brisa, but we said if Machmas Einis is mutter, like we said, we had two explanations of Einis. Either the Amri starts above Aliyah, the general is coming to the city, and then his henchmen come on the day before that, so therefore you can't do it on Tuesday either, then we let you do it on Monday. Therefore it's called Einis, not Sitra Sakana, but you can lose your whole wedding. And the second interpretation, which is what we're discussing, is if the father of the chassan or the mother kala dies, that's also an Einis that we said because no one's going to be able to prepare as well. Everything, the bread is baked, and the meat is slaughtered, and the wine is prepared, and therefore that's what we said that since once you're going to do the bias mitzvah, you have the chassan before you bury the person, so the chassan already took effect like a regular, and therefore the avel is not going to come ahead and take effect. And that's where we continue 7 lines down at the top of the Yomit. So he qualifies this teaching, and he says that Lo Shana, we didn't learn this Ella only if Shanas and Mayim Agabi Bas. The meat was already put onto the water was put onto the meat, which you can't sell it anymore in the marketplace already. Sometimes you prepared the food already. It's not. You can't sell it anymore. That's when we said, okay, then we're going to go ahead and do the chasna before we bury the dead. But let's say you didn't put water on the meat yet. So although you went and you slaughtered the meat, fine, mizdabin. Go ahead and sell the meat, and you can make the chasna after the shiva. However, Amar Rava qualifies. He says, "Ubekrach." Now, in a city with as many people that are around and as many people that will jump to buy food, then it says Rava that even if you put the water on the meat, it's like mamish. What's that new thing they have with the water with the meat to make it in the suvi, right? It's everything's already made, ready to prepare. It doesn't make a difference. You can sell it, put it on your WhatsApp status, and you're having it now. We have someone coming over, and so in the city, says Rabbi, even if the water's on the meat already, everything prepared, you'll find someone to buy it. Someone wants to make a kumzitz tonight, and we can't make a wedding tonight, and someone's going to come and say, we'll take the food because we're looking for a good queue or something like that. Moreover, Amar Papa, he says the other way around. Ubekfar, now in a village, live out somewhere in the Hicks, somewhere where there's someone that, maybe Alaska or somewhere Africa, wherever maybe you decide to leave, stay over there. And even if there's no water on the meat, it's not going to be sold, and therefore then the heter is even going to be when there's no water. So the Gemara wonders, says, wait a second, Rav Chizda differentiated between if you put water but didn't put water. He said the whole halacha was only if you put water, but if you don't put water, then you have to sell it. Then you don't have the heter. So it says the Gemara, you don't have his teaching, not in the city, because in the city you said you could always sell it, and you don't have it in the village because the village said you can never sell it. So when did he have his halacha that he differentiated between the water's on and not? Manav shach. City is always you could sell. Village you can never sell. So Rav Ashi says kagrim masa machasi. We're talking like, for example, like masa machasi, the mafka mekrach. It's not a city, but a mafka mekvar, but it's bigger than a village. So as Taisa points out, that's how most places actually are. So it's somewhere in the middle. So it's not like you have so much opportunity and you don't have no opportunity. That's what we said. Okay. If the water's on, then that's what we said it's going to be a big loss because you're not going to really be able to sell it. That's when we said they had to. But if there's no water on the meat, then it's fresh, it can last, and then you could sell it, people would buy it, That's what the halacha was said. And Tani Kabbalah said, Rabbi Bryce said the Rabbi Chizda that explains that it's talking about where you put the water on the meat. That's when we had the leniency of the Bryce of the previous time. Says the Bryce, so if let's say the bread is baked, and the meat was slaughtered, and the wine was already diluted, you put the water on the meat. So you see that's the variable that Rav Chizda said, the Bryce says explicitly. And the Meis of the groom died, or the mother of the bride. Okay, you take the mother, the father, Nebuch, you put the mother into a side room, as a chasm, as a kal, you take the chasm and kal, you walk them down to the chuppah, and they do the act of intimacy, and they separate. And then they bury the dead, and the next Shabbat Yimei Mishta, then they have the 7 days of Shabbat Brachas, then you have the 7 days of mourning, and all those days, that in those 14 days, Hu Yashin Ben Anashim, so he's sleeping amongst the men, V'ishta Yashin Ben Anashim, and she's sleeping amongst the women. And B'chein, well, as we'll discuss exactly what's this B'chein, and also Misha Pirsa Ishtei Nida. If, let's say, his wife became a Nida as they're going to the Chuppah, she becomes a Nida. So then the halacha is, this was called Chuppah's Nida, Hu Yashin Ben Anashim, he's going to sleep amongst the men that night, they're not going back to the same place, he's sleeping with the men, she's sleeping amongst the women, meaning we don't trust them one with the other to be secluded in the same room. But as we mentioned, for all those 30 days during the Shleishim, the Kala, she's going to be able to wear her jewelry, all her makeup for those 30 days. And whether there was a Einis, whether there was not an Einis, either way, the halach is lo yivol. The first biyah should not be lo be'erev Shabbos, not on Friday night, because as we'll explain on the next Daf, because he's making chabura, it's creating a wound, and v'libo Shabbos, not on Matzah Shabbos. As you might explain why can't you do the first biyah on Matzah Shabbos? We'll explain that. But the Gemara goes now to explain in detail this brisa. So he said that when we had the situation of burying the relative, so he said, Hu Yashin Ben Anashim, so he's going to sleep amongst the men. She's going to sleep amongst the women. Says the Gemara, so this is Misayeya Alei, this supports, this that we learned that they're forbidden to have tashmish during the Shabbat Yimei Mishta, even though it's like a Yom Tiv for them, and it supports Rabbi Yechanan. According to Rabbi Yechanan, he says, although there's no laws of mourning during the Yom Tiv, but things that are discreet, which are not recognizable to people, that he's mourning through that, no, they actually do apply. So you can't do it. This is a well-known halacha. Anyone who has been availus know this idea that if it's something b'fehasya, they're always the shilas. Always is it b'fehasya? It's not b'fehasya. There's a kiddush in shul. I'm not going to be there. What does that mean? So that's the saying. Availus b'fehasya we don't do on Shabbos and Yom Tov. But if it's betzina, then yes, you do have the laws of availus, and therefore tashma shamid, which is obviously davar shebetzina, and halacha requires it to be that. Therefore, then that is going to apply. Which again, that's supported from this idea that we said he sleeps amongst the men and she sleeps amongst the women.
You can still do the kedushin in the apartment, right?
The kedushin?
Yeah, the kedushin. You do the kedushin in the apartment. Even though she shows that she has
the nida?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm saying that's chuppah's nida. Yeah, they just can't be secluded. They can't because of nida. And the Gemara is going to discuss that. What, every time a woman's a nida, you think he goes with the men and she goes with the women? But the Gemara first qualifies this teaching. It says, Darish Rabbi Yisrael b'nei Rav Meshmei Rav. It says, Loishan, we didn't learn that they're not trusted to be secluded. Elish Leibah is where they didn't have intimacy. Well, obviously, the great desire of the single boy is like, this is like, what he's been waiting for. So then we can't have them secluded. But if they already had biyah, his wife could sleep with him, and even though obviously it's forbidden for them to have intimacy because of Avelis, that's not a problem. We have no problem him being and her in the same room. Says the Gemara, wait a second, how can you say that? But we said, if you recall, the teaching was that you do bilas mitzvah before you bury them. And it tell me, what did we learn? Hu Yashim and Anashim, he sleeps amongst the men, V'yishin and Anashim, she sleeps amongst the women. So how you tell me that the whole halacha was only said, gesagt, if the Nabiya, so he's always waiting, he's excited for this thing, and he's not going to be able to hold himself back, so can't have you guys secluded. What do you mean? The halacha was explicit that they already did biyah. Says Gemara, no, ki kama, when did Rav say that loy shanu, that we didn't learn that this halacha, that we trust them if there is already biyah? That's talking about apirsa ishtei nida. That's talking about, there was two cases that we spoke about in this brisa. We spoke about 2 times we said that they can't be secluded together. One, Chassan and the Kala, and then they're in Avelis. Another one was regarding if she became a Nida. Kala became a Nida. What's going to be? The first night? Both of them we said they have to separate. When Rava had qualified this teaching, it was only on the case of when she became a Nida. Nida is a very severe issa, it's a chiyuv of karas. So the husband is trusted that he's not going to be disgraceful regarding issa of karas. That's where we said that if you did bia, that you could be secluded with her. But Avelis is only issa drabanan, and even though they did bia, he's not going to be trusted that not to have bia with his kala, and therefore they have to sleep separate in separate rooms, him with the men and her with the women. Says the Gemara, but how can you say this? V'chein ketana. But we said v'chein. That's what we said before. What's the v'chein? The Gemara assumes that on all the halachas that we mentioned for Avelis is what we're comparing to the halacha of Nida. Now, as you recall, by Avelis we mentioned it was talking about where there was already Baal. And therefore, that we're not going to trust, even if we really were Baal, for Nida, just like you didn't trust for Avelis. So it sounds like you're comparing totally v'chein. So that just like by Avelis, that even though you had you're not trusting, so it sounds like by Nida also you're not trusting. So the Gemara says on Amud Beis, no, you have to read it a little bit differently. V'chein mishapisa ishtei Nida. So too, if the wife became a Nida, v'loi Baal is not going on the exact case of Avelis. If she became a Nida and they didn't have Bia yet, then hu yashin bein anashim, ishtei shein anashim. Then he has to sleep with the men and she has to sleep with the woman. As Rashi says, in other words, when you said v'chein, it was only going on the case of the element of hu yashin bein anashim v'yishin bein anashim. But it wasn't the same exact case of that you already had Bia. Because remember, by the Chassan and Kala, we said, okay, look, the father died, the mother died, we got to do the chuppah, we got to do the Bias mitzvah, and then we separate. That's by that case. The case of Nida that we said that you also have to separate, we don't trust you, that was only b'shaloi, and you did not do Bia. You didn't do Bia yet, then we don't trust you. But if you did Bia, then we trust you because Nida is a chama diga issa. If you didn't do Bia, oh, this type is too strong. Even if it's Nida, I don't care what's going on. This is you can't keep them alone in the room. But if they already had Bia once before, and it's Nida, which is a chama diga issa, then they could be Mesiacha, then they could be together. But by Avelis, even if they did Bia, then not. Says the Gemara, remember, is that to say that Avelis kilale? That the Isra of Avelis, the law of mourning is more leicht, it's lesser for a person to violate Menida, more than that of the laws of the Isra Nida? Meaning, for Avelis, you don't trust him, even if he already had Bia. But by Nida, you trust him if they had Bia. But seems to be contradicted from another halacha. The halacha says, all the activities that a woman does for her husband, which we're going to see later on in Perek Afal Pi, what are those things? So a menstruating woman could go ahead and do for her husband. Chutz, except mimezigas hakais, which is pouring the cup. Everyone who knows the halachas of nida for the harchakis, these are those where to give him a cup of wine, about sasamita, which Taisa discusses at length exactly what type of making the bed is it. But it's those of which are closeness and endearment, not the hard work when she has, don't worry, you can let her do the hard work for that. It means those are like, spreading it out, like making it look very, it brings to Hergel Davar to that, to intimacy. That's the reasons why we're saying a need does not do these things for a husband. And Marchatzes upon the other Baraglim and washing his face and his hands and his feet, that those are the things that are not allowed to be done when the woman is a nida. Now, in contrast, by mourning we learned not like this. We learned although we said that the person is not allowed to force his wife during her days of mourning when her father or mother dies. You're not allowed to force her to put on eyeliner or at least pekeses, which Rashi and Tais is exactly what that is, but it's some type of like rouge, like some type of like a makeup on her face. But although you're not allowed to force her to put on makeup, but by Emes Amar, in truth they said, she can pour for him the cup, she can make the bed for him, she can wash his hands, his face, and his feet. And what do you see from that? You see that obviously you're not concerned that that's going to bring them to intimacy. Wait a second. aren't these acts by in their essence that they're very marginal to be close? So you see, by Avelis you're letting it, which obviously because it's so severe that you're not concerned that they're going to come to violence, but by Nid you don't. That's the exact opposite you just said before. You said that when the Chasin Kala, the Kala becomes a Nida, you're saying if they once did be a, go ahead, you guys can be together. Because it's so severe, but by Avelis, it's not so severe, so even though you were together, you still have to separate. Now you're saying the exact opposite when it comes to these things are margal. You see that Avelis is Chamer and Nida is not. Says it's not a difficulty. The truth is that Avelis is more Kal than Nida, as we originally said. And therefore you have to separate for Avelis, but you don't have to separate for Nida. So how do we explain this teaching that we just mentioned? That's not difficult because it depends. That Khan, over here, this that we said before, that he has to sleep amongst the men and she amongst the women, is by Avelis the day, is by his morning. His morning, he's going to be very lax about, and therefore we're concerned, and even though they had beer, they have to separate. Khan over here, where we said that she could pour from the cup and all those other things, is not meaning, obviously, we said that there we are it's chamer, that we're not concerned, is because that's Bavelis the da. That's her morning. That's where we said that you're not allowed to force her to put on makeup. Obviously, we're talking about her morning, where she doesn't want to put on makeup. But that's the exact reason why she's allowed to pour from the cup. Because if he gets that lust for his wife, but since it's her morning, she's not going to listen to him. I'm in mourning for my father, for my mother. So that's the reason why there it's going to be chamer, not because Etzim is more chamer. Really, it's like we said before that Abil is more kal. But over here, that we're not chayshish, that she's making a bed for him, guess what's going to happen soon? No! This is I'm in mourning for my father. That's where we said that we're not going to be concerned by her Abil. By his Abilis, we are concerned because she's not, and she's like, okay, for her it's a regular day of the week. Her mother-in-law maybe passed away, but she's not so bothered by that. And then they might be intimate. That explains that discrepancy.
It's interesting that we're not chayshik with the husband, that he'll also not want to have intimacy during that.
Right, even during his Avelis. Yeah, because it's a Dirabanan, it doesn't sound like it's like a tsar Shabbat. It sounds like it's more about the halacha. It's like, okay, it's rabbinic and whatever. It's not like the halacha of Nida. Nida is like, they give you classes before you get married, they scare you, what this is, For Avelis, it sounds like it's not as chamer. But the Gemara says, asking on the brisa that we said, we had mentioned, if you recall, the case conceptualization was that when we spoke about these cases, we said that the father of the groom or the mother of the bride passed away. Wait a second. You obviously are also talking about her mourning. That the Tana was machmer and said, we don't trust you. We said that even if you had bia, you wanted to tell me, it's Avelis the day. So therefore, that's why it's not so chamer. And then we don't trust you. But the case is also Ima Shakala. That was one of the cases. If the mother of the bride passed away, we say we put them in the side room, they do chuppah and bia, and then they go and they separate. Why separate? We already had bia. We don't trust you. But it's not his Avelis, it's her Avelis. It's her mother who passed away. Your whole Teretz was built on the foundation that you're telling me that it's only his mourning, but her mourning, we're not concerned with that. Says, no, good question, but Kikatani, when did we learn the mother of the bride? Was Asha'ara, was on the other cases. Meaning, about putting the corpse into the side room, but regarding sleeping him and the men and her by the women, that was only talking about the Avelis of the Chassan when his father passed away, not for that of the cow. Because that we're actually not concerned. Says the Gemara, do we really differentiate between his mourning and her mourning? Like we said, are we concerned for regarding if this is going to bring to intimacy or not? But by the time in the Brisa, that doesn't seem to differentiate. If his father-in-law or his mother-in-law passed away, he cannot force his wife, if she's in mourning for her mother or father, to put on makeup. He's like, I like when you get dressed up. And this, that. He's like, what are you talking about? She's in mourning over here. You can't force her to get dressed up. And rather, he has to actually turn over his own bed. We don't do this anymore, says Taisus, but they used to turn over the beds. But no, you give else. Actually, not only could you not force her to put on makeup, when your Shver and Shviga pass away, you have to do Avelis with her, which actually is a halacha. There's limitations to how that is today, but so too if her father-in-law or mother-in-law pass away, what are you doing? Getting dressed up over here? Everyone's in black over here and you're putting on makeup? No, she has to turn over the bed, and she has to mourn with him. But one thing we see, that obviously from the fact that we didn't say when it's his mourning, that we didn't say he has to sleep amongst the men and she amongst the women, obviously that it is severe. It's just like when she's in mourning and we don't differentiate. So you see the Bryce not differentiating. Our whole answer was based on that there's a difference between his mourning and her mourning. Says the Gemara, no. Today, you have to amend the Bryce. You have to say that by his mourning, it should say Hu Yashim Bein Anashim, that he sleeps amongst the men, Vishte Yeshena Bein Anashim, and she sleeps amongst the women, because we are concerned by Avelis that they're going to be more lax about it, and therefore you would have to separate them. But it says the Gemara, Havachein Ketani. But what do you mean? It says V'chein, which sounds like that there's no difference. It says this and this are the same. It says the Gemara, Kiketani, when we say V'chein, is Akichel V'apirkas, regarding makeup, which that she's not allowed to do. That's the same for her mourning or for his mourning. But regarding the halacha of separating where they sleep, that would only be by his mourning and not by her mourning. But it says the Gemara, but it said that she is noheges imay with him, his avelis katani. What does it mean that she's being noig with him? My love, it doesn't mean imay b'mita, that she's with him in the bed. Meaning, obviously, that even by his mourning, we trust them that they're allowed to be in the same bedroom, and we're not concerned that they're going to have intimacy. That's not like what we said up until now, that we don't trust them. So you want to lie? No, imay doesn't mean with him in the same room. It means imay b'bayis. It means with him in the house, meaning, as Rashi explains, that the reason is not that because we trust them. That's not what we're saying, that we trust them, they can be in the same bedroom together. No, we're coming to teach you actually something very different. We're actually coming to tell you that this mourning that the spouse has to have is only with that spouse. Imay, because actually it's only showing respect for your spouse. And so to him for her. That her mourning is not on him, only in front of her. It's a way of respecting his wife. Like Rab said to his son Chia, when his father-in-law passed away, he says, in front of your wife, you should actually act with mourning. But if it's not in front of your wife, you don't have to act like a mourner. It's only in front, when your shven shviga pass away, that you have to show respect for the spouse, that you act. That's what imay means. It doesn't mean imay b'mita. Because you actually can't be in the same room. You have to be in separate with separate genders and separate separation. Because again, regarding the laws of Avelis, by him, we don't trust him. Another approach to resolve the contradiction, if mourning is more lax than neither, which we had asked from, Rav Yomi says, Mi kamadamis abelusa dahacha. How can you compare the mourning over here of chasen and kala, which that we are concerned that they're going to be together, abelusa de alma, to regular mourning of a regular couple? Avelis the alma. When you have a regular mourning, you're right, Chamer, of course Avelis is severe. And that's why we said that she's allowed to go ahead and tend to him, she's allowed to make his bed for him, do all these things, because we're not concerned for Avelis that he's going to violate. But like, this is not going to be disgraceful regarding the laws of Avelis and be intimate with his wife. But Avelis Dahacha, when we said on Amad Aleph regarding the Chasna and Kala, that's different. Why? Even the Kilabit, since the rabbis were lenient regarding the mourning, that they let you go ahead and make a whole chasna and everything, this and that, even though the father died. So then they're going to come to say, it's okay, we can make him design, says we be together, we can do all these things. And therefore they were more machmer to say that you have to separate the sleeping quarters because we were so lenient. That's what they're machmer. But really, generally, you don't have to be machmer because it is intrinsically chamer, and that's why it's not a difficulty. Which of course is Michael, what was the leniency we did for Chazal that we considered they're going to be so lax and then be intimate? Everything is because we said Boil Bil's mitzvah upayrish, where they're allowed to even be intimate and then they have to separate, even though the father or the mother had died already. Says, what do you mean? The mourning didn't take effect yet. If according to Rabbi Eliezer, that's actually Yisrael Pesach Habayis, that's until you leave the opening of the house and you take the mess out. Or either Rabbi Yeshua, until you went ahead and you, which Rashi explains, so he says Arichas, that it means something else, but it's the covering of the coffin of the dead person. But the mourning didn't take effect yet. So what he's saying, it's no leniency, we weren't lenient laws of Avelis, Avelis didn't take effect yet. So no, that leniency was the time that we learned, no Yeshua have Mishnah, that we said, you have Sheva Brachas. And then you have the laws of Avelis. That's a big leniency, and therefore you would have thought that we could even take this further, we could go ahead and be intimate. So therefore there we were machmer to say that you have to separate, but generally it would be the same thing as need that we wouldn't be, you're allowed to be have yichud together because you already had bia, we would not be concerned. But only over here in this situation where we had certain leniency, we thought you'd take it too far. Therefore we had a chomer that you have to hu yashim ben anashim, the yishin ben anashim. Thank you to any time.